Jefferson Robbins here with NCW Live TV. We're visiting Derby Canyon Natives plant nursery just outside of Peshastin here in the beautiful canyon areas around Peshastin. Joined by Mel Asher, the owner. How are you today, Mel?
I'm good. How are you?
Not bad. Thanks a lot for letting us come out and visit you.
Yeah, glad to have you.
Well, I wanted to ask about Derby Canyon Natives. You guys are an established business, been around a while. Tell me a little bit about the history of the business.
So the business was started in 2003 by Ted Alway, who saw a need for native plant materials, primarily for revegetation, restoration, habitat type projects in the valley. And he started very small and just kind of gradually scaled up over the years to where we're at now, where we typically grow 150 to 200,000 plants a year on approximately 3 acres.
3 acres. So the size has grown, the volume
Yes.
and output has grown.
Yep, the species have grown. He's added in different species and sizes over the years, just kind of based on demand and interest.
And the business passed on from Ted to you just this year.
Yep, January 1st.
Did you come into this business with a particular background in native plants?
Yeah, I've worked with native plants my whole career, starting from right out of college, where I worked for a native plant nursery, actually in Michigan. And then I moved to Texas, studied native plant restoration in southern Texas grassland communities, and then met my husband, and we ended up moving up here. And I've worked for a private restoration company out of Moses Lake for the last 11 years until the beginning of this year when I moved up here.
And Derby Canyon Natives has a number of clients who need your native plantings for different kinds of projects. So what kind of projects might you contribute plantings to?
It's a lot of salmon habitat restoration projects. So an organization, typically an agency or nonprofit, will decide to kind of put meanders or large woody debris or other roughness back into creeks and rivers. And the construction disturbance behind that needs to be planted with native plants. And so that's typically where the nursery comes in. They provide that native plant material.
But you're also a commercial nursery in the sense that people who want to do some yard planting can come and consult with you and try to find the right product, right?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, that's actually one of the most fun things that I get to do is talk to local landowners about native plants and how to use them in the landscape.
Are you seeing more homeowners coming to you saying, I'm tired of lawn maintenance, I want to go native, what should I do?
Yes, more and more. I get dozens of people each year saying, can I take, lawn out, plant something more drought tolerant, just convert lawn completely into pollinator habitat. There's a lot of diversity in what people are interested in doing, but there's definitely a movement towards sustainability in the landscape.
Why do you think people are having this urge to do this now?
I think there's probably interest in conserving water, both from an environmental perspective and just the cost of irrigation, and just all of the increased focus on pollinator declines has really, I think, urged people to diversify and plant more flowering plants in the home landscape, because there's a lot of people that we work with that are very concerned about conserving pollinators.
If there's somebody who comes to you and says, I want to use less water and I want to help preserve pollinators, are there starting shrubs like, or starting grasses, things that you recommend right off the bat?
Yes, yeah, I have some go-to species that are very easy to plant and maintain. And that would include like serviceberry, red osier dogwood, yarrow, Lewis's flax. There's 20 or so different species that integrate well without a lot of disturbance into the home landscape, but can add some diversity pretty quickly.
I mentioned to you earlier that I've had a lot of lawn maintenance problems at my house where I just can't seem to keep a lawn functional and alive without overwatering, all kinds of problems. So if I'm wanting to get rid of the lawn that came with my house and try something native, drought tolerant, doesn't need as much attention, what would you recommend?
So we have what's called our Naturalized turf blend mix, and it's a blend of native and a few non-native species that are extremely drought tolerant. They typically need to be watered once or twice a week, and the reason they're drought tolerant is they've got really deep root systems, and so you tend to water them once a week for a longer time period rather than every other day for 5 or 15 minutes like you would a turf grass that has a really shallow root system. So we sell a lot of that seed up here in the upper valley, and folks either don't water it at all and kind of let it go dormant in the summer, or water it once every couple of weeks to keep it green, and it will only get about knee height. You can mow it or not mow it, and it's just kind of a nice kind of alternative to having a kind of a sea of just solid turf grass.
Are there differences in climate, microclimate, where if I'm coming to you from Wenatchee and say I want to plant native, or I'm coming to you from Leavenworth or the Columbia Basin and say I want to plant native, are you going to make different recommendations based on their area?
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes they might use the same species, but they would have to treat it a little differently if they were in a lower elevation Columbia Basin or Wenatchee Valley site as opposed to Leavenworth. Obviously, we get a lot more rain and snow up here. It's not quite as hot. There's a little bit more shade, and so if you want to go truly native without any sort of irrigation, you're going to be planting really low elevation, drought-resistant plants like shrub steppe type plants in the Wenatchee Valley area and more woodland species. Most people want to plant something that stays green in the summer, particularly for fire risks. And so in the Wenatchee Valley, you're always going to be doing a little bit of drip irrigating in the summer to keep stuff green and happy. So yeah, it's different species, but it's more so the care of those species and the site selection, the planting site selection for where to plant them to keep them happy.
Now, you and I talked originally back in June to start work on this story, and at that time a number of things were blooming. We had things like desert evening primrose was in bloom, Penstemon, that's the one, was also in bloom, and the woolly sunflower. I remember that. They were all really pretty, but blooms don't persist throughout a season. So what's in bloom right now among the natives?
Well, actually, we still have some evening primrose in bloom. There's some different penstemons. There's not quite the diversity that you have in the early summer, but we have, I think, 4 or 5 different flowers that bloom through the summer and into early fall. Snow buckwheat, cutleaf penstemon, those are 2 of the showiest ones.
Now, you have offered some open dates, retail dates, which don't happen all the time, when people can come to Derby Canyon Natives, look for you, look for your advice and your input, and maybe go home with a couple of plantings. When would your open dates be coming up?
So we're going to open September 2nd, which is a Friday, and then we'll be open Fridays and Saturday mornings through October, weather permitting, of course. So yeah, we'll be open for 2 months this fall, and then we'll be closed for the winter, and then we'll open back up in early April.
When people come to look for plantings, do they say, I've already got some in progress and I just want to augment it? Are you seeing return customers, people coming back?
Yeah, a lot of the people that come to the nursery have been coming for years or even a decade or 2, and yeah, they're just continuing to add new species to their landscape or replacing plants that have, not made it. So we do get new customers that are looking for a full yard renovation, but the majority of the folks we see are returning customers from just years and years of repeat business.
Well, Mel, if someone is coming out and looking to start planting native, what's your opening advice? I mean, what's the thing they need to keep in mind while they're embarking on that project?
I think they need to keep in mind how much irrigation they want to do. If they want to do any, or if they want to do a limited amount, they need to understand that pretty clearly before they come in. And with that in mind and where they're located, we can usually give them some pretty sound advice on what species to select. But I think there's a misconception that because it's native, it doesn't require any water, and that's generally not the case, particularly for lower areas like Wenatchee.
So keep in mind, just as with agriculture, water is going to be primary.
Yeah, yep, absolutely.
Mel Asher with Derby Canyon Natives, thanks a lot for taking some time to talk with us today.
You're very welcome.
We'll be right back.